There was a moment 5 years ago that just blew me away. Yoshi P, the producer and director who took over Final Fantasy XIV in its failing state and then working hard to actually make 1.0 playable, while at the same time building out the future, and that future was a realm reborn. He took the stage. The emotion overwhelmed him. This was a man that I could believe in. This is a man I believe in. Now, with over 5 years' experience behind its rebirth and with each expansion and patch, this game feels more and more thin. And it's with looking at this game and talking with the community, I reluctantly make this video to try and answer the question, why is Final Fantasy XIV dying? I think that with all critiques, it's usually best to start by praising the game for all that it does right and all that I love about it. Plus, I find that it helps for anyone seeing this video's thumbnail and title. While not watching the first minute of this video and jumping to accuse me of not being a fan of this game or that I'm attacking this game needlessly. So to those viewers, I say welcome, I'm glad you're here. Please sound off in the comments below and let's have that conversation. I do want to get your feedback and your thoughts on this video, even if you haven't watched it. But let me just say that I love Final Fantasy XIV, and I've been with this game since the 1.0 beta, and I've been helping out new players even before then. If you don't know, I've created podcasts, I've created personalized guides for players, and I've covered the news and various other opinions about this game since this game was announced at E3. I'm a fan of Final Fantasy, and for the longest time, this game has been a source of great joy and wonder. Its fall and rise is nothing short of historic, and its focus on story and a world that pulls me in is beyond compare. The patch cycle is the best I've ever seen in an MMO, but now we're starting to see a shift, and it's with that patch cycle that I start to see some cracks. I've tried to weigh and measure my disappointment in Stormblood and ask myself some critical questions, like am I just burnt out of the game right now? This is perfectly acceptable and natural when you play a game for so long. But when I look at it, I just haven't found the interest in logging in and capping out my tomes, running dailies, and it all boils down to the main disappointment that I feel. I've done all of this before, and I've been doing it for the last 5 years. And while each patch of Stormblood has added new content and new quality of life adjustments and more, I just keep on waiting and hoping for more. Looking for some reason that really pulls me in and holds my attention. This, for all that Stormblood as an expansion did to improve the game, has only met with what I would call as a carbon copy of Heavensward. And with that copy, content being removed from the game. We went from 3 jobs to 2 jobs. We didn't even get another race. And that's actually not the core of my complaint, but when I start to compare the two games, Stormblood just feels visibly weaker. When I look at Stormblood and where we were this time when Heavensward, I ask, where is all the content? And to be fair, I have expectations for this game, and perhaps those expectations are wrong. Perhaps I'm wrong. But when we hear from Yoshi P and the majority of people talk about this game focusing on housing and glamour, both fine and good things to have in this game, I grow ever bored of what they offer in terms of content. Objection! But you're not running Savage content. You're not doing Eureka. You're not doing content A, B, C, D, X, Y, and Z. This is something that I've looked at and proposed my own ideas on what I would like to see them expand on. You can check out those videos via my State of Final Fantasy XIV playlist and let me know your thoughts there. But I do find this objection for the most part grounded and true. I am not doing this type of content. The reasons for me not doing this are varied with various life events that have happened over the past year. So I do think this could be a factor in my personal disappointment, but not for the rest of the community who finds this game lacking. I do want to say it's completely reasonable to be disappointed in a game that you haven't cleared 100% of the title. And also, a player doesn't need to be interested in all parts of the game to be able to be disappointed with the parts they are interested in. So that objection aside, here is why I think Final Fantasy XIV is dying. Number 5. The open world zones are big and beautiful, and once you're done with them, there is no reason to spend any time there. Eventually, they're going to add in beast tribes. So if we take this carbon copy into 5.0, these great beautiful worlds, and then point 1 you get a beast tribe, point 2 you get a beast tribe, point 3 you get a beast tribe, point 4? Maybe? Something? We don't know. But those seem to be the only real reasons of going out into the world. And this fundamentally ties into some of these other objections, and I think something that is rotten at the core of the game, and it's that we let all of this content sit by the wayside. Number 4, systems that have gone untouched, unloved for whole expansion cycles and more. I'm looking at you, Grand and Free companies. There seems to be this overarching world and things that we would love to tie into and do, and yet they're piecemealed, unloved. And I've talked about this at length of where I would love to see them take these different systems, giving them updates, updating the hunts, updating all of these things. Number 3, the companion app. This tells me that either something is broken in the code or something is broken in the company. It feels like a massive cash grab, not in tune with the day-and-day players of this game. In the end, it feels wrong, and I hope they fix it, but for the most part, it was a huge letdown. Number 2, the theme park that this game tries to be is all walled off from one another. Each attraction feeds into the only one type of progression system that we have, and while it has introduced other progression systems, they are walled off and separate. A player once hitting all jobs at cap has no reason for XP and no reason to run a roulette and no reason to care. So why build these type of static systems in 2018? And finally, number 1. The single-minded progression system at its core is one of the great issues I have ultimately landed on while playing this game. Tying into the walled-off theme park approach, content is created and abandoned quickly and with prejudice, because it offers no true reward to one system or another. This is where we need Square Enix to take risks and allow this kind of idea to expand. If I as a player want to do X, it should ultimately feed in together, whether it's a currency type exchange system or something bigger and broader. Why are poetics only used for anything level 60 and below? Why isn't there some small currency conversion so that they have value to my overall enjoyment of the game as a whole? It doesn't slow me down, it just converts that type of progression. Why can't I run dungeons and advance in Eureka? It doesn't need to be as advanced as Eureka. Eureka could be the most obviously optimal way of doing it. But as a player, if I want to run a roulette, I have to make that choice. And because everything still fundamentally funnels into the one gear progression system that this game has used for the last 5 years, at the end of the day, it just seems like, why not? What's the big deal? If I got 1/100, elemental experience by running a dungeon, who ultimately cares? I'm not running that dungeon to outpace somebody in Eureka, but I shouldn't have to make that choice and that sacrifice to what works for my time schedule. And maybe that's the only thing that works for me. Maybe I'm a type of player who doesn't have that ability to be able to participate in that content. You don't have to reward me greatly, but just some small progression to break down the walls between these attractions. Eureka feeds into the gear progression, Heaven on High feeds into the gear progression, dungeons feed into the gear progression, but they all don't feed into one another. And I think that ultimately is a core issue. Now, I want to see more things expand with progression, but we're going to get into that in other videos because I've been working on ideas of ways that the system could progress in meaningful and interesting ways that aren't game-breaking or require a lot of time and investment. And as a quick preview, just give progression systems that have no impact on battle. Reduce sprint cooldown, reduce teleport cost per aetherite, per every level that you gain maybe. I don't know, that's just one simple idea. I think this game could be great and should be great. Now, I've offered my own ideas for solutions to these problems, and if you haven't been following along in those videos, in summary, it's about making XP worth something at level cap. It's about allowing players to make progress in the game by playing the content they want and have the ability to participate in. And it's about allowing dynamic difficulty on past content so that players can challenge it at the current level cap with weekly modifiers and more, thus keeping the pool of content that is always current, can be challenging, right at your fingertips. So you're not necessarily bored of running the same 2 dungeons over and over and over again. Nobody's going to enjoy that. No one will enjoy that 5 years in. It's just impossible. In short, the development team needs to be able to create dynamic content that allows players to enjoy themselves and can focus in on making new content that we want more than the old. I don't want them spending a lot of time revitalizing old content and fights that we've done, but allow the system to expand. The old content right now is created and ignored, and we are just left with very small updates which we consume until we're bored and we want more. So in the end, all of this boils down to a few conflicting ideas. 1, Yoshi P and the team are working on something big for 5.0 or sooner, and this is my personal hope. This is the thing that I'm most afraid of, though, because I am setting up expectations that might never be delivered on. What could it be? I think personally I would love to see a new Calamity. From a lore and story perspective, it makes sense to the overall arching story of this game. It gives them the ability to really kind of go into the core root of the systems, finish cleaning up any 1.0 code, and more. But are they doing that? Do they have the ability to do that with the team and everything they've got? I don't know. And thus this expectation or this hope that they're working on something big might not prove to be true. And then in the end, I'm going to be left utterly disappointed and maybe a little disenfranchised. Or the development team is struggling and things are taking way longer than they used to. This kind of makes sense. It feels like that's what Yoshi P is saying in various interviews. While at the end of the day, that means, what is the problem? Is it the engine? Is it the process? Is it the players? Is it the net code? Is it the servers? These are problems that can be solved, and I wish Yoshi P might clue us in to his plan. He needs to share his vision for where the game needs to be. That way I know what I'm waiting for. That way I know that they're working on something, even if they're struggling, even if they hit walls. That in the end, it's going to be worth it, that they know what's happening. Because the worst option here is number 3, that the development team has lost touch with the market. This could read better as perhaps I've lost touch with the market. Maybe in the end, I'm in the minority and players are really enjoying everything this game has to offer. Whatever the case, whatever the reason, I want more for Final Fantasy XIV. I worry that I'm putting too many expectations on the next expansion, and that isn't fair for the developers or for the community. It is my profound hope that whatever the reason, issue, or plan, that Yoshi P can show us his vision for the game for the next 5 years and beyond. Now, with that, I'm going to take my leave. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments below, and let's have that conversation. If you made it this far into the video, let me thank you personally for hanging out while I express my frustration with 14. I think it can and will get better. I think it has to. I hope that it happens sooner rather than later, and I'll be sure to update you all when and if it happens. With that, my name is Brian and this is Work to Game. I wish you all the best, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.